Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a great day today, and in this video I'm going to be sharing my picks for the top 10 best supervillains in comic book movies. And for this list I'm specifically looking at live action villains, so I won't be including any animated ones. Keep in mind though, this is just my opinion. Let me know your favorites in the comment section down below, and without any further ado, let's hop right into it. Coming in at number 10 is Shredder from the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, as well as the sequel. And this is just a case where they adapted a classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villain and basically just got him right first try. While a lot of the movie is pretty goofy because it is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder himself is actually pretty intimidating, and there's definitely a good balance with his more darker moments and then the more lighthearted moments in the film. And this is a case where Shredder isn't only intimidating because of how he looks and the weapons he has, but it's also because of the clear amount of influence he has on all of the people that he gets to join the Foot Clan. And so it really just shows his power. And even the way they bring him back to life in the second movie, I don't think undermines anything about the first movie. And it's actually really cool how at the end of that film he turns into Super Shredder, which just looks amazing. Coming in at number 9 is Catwoman from Batman Returns, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. And out of all the live action Catwomans, I think this is the best. It's just an incredible performance from Michelle Pfeiffer, and the dynamic with her and Batman is done very well. Her origin definitely changes a little bit here because it is a Tim Burton movie, so he kind of wanted to make it as crazy as possible, but I think it still works in its own way. And what I think works very well about this version of the character is that we get to see her just kind of descend into madness. And just overall, she's one of the standout characters in this movie. Coming in at number 8 is Steppenwolf from the DC Extended Universe. And to be clear, we're talking about the Snyder Cut, and not the theatrical Justice League from 2017, because that was completely different. Basically, this version of Steppenwolf is a very intimidating villain. You know he's not going to stop at anything to get what he wants. And just every time he's on screen, there is this sense of tension. His technology and all that kind of stuff, it just seems really cool. And unlike the 2017 version of Justice League, where he was literally just evil for the sake of being evil and there was no backstory given, in this version of the film we actually get to see his motivations, where he wants to prove himself to Darkseid. The dynamic with him and Darkseid in this movie is pretty much the equivalent of the dynamic with Ronan and Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy. But speaking of that, Darkseid in this movie is actually really cool, and I would put him on this list if we actually got more movies seeing more of him and his character development. But because there isn't a lot of focus on him in this movie, I can't really put him on the list because we don't really see his motivations as much. Coming in at number 7 is the Penguin from the Matt Reeves Batman universe, played by Colin Farrell. When it comes to the 2022 Batman movie, despite the fact that Penguin is much more of a side character where there's more focus on Catwoman and the Riddler, he just absolutely steals every scene he's in. It's obviously the standout performance in this movie, and obviously Colin Farrell doesn't look anything like this version of the Penguin. It's a bunch of makeup and that kind of stuff. So it's just amazing how they brought him to life, and this version of the character is more of that gangster crime boss. He was so good they even made a spin-off series about him, and to be completely honest, I just hope we get to see more of him in the Batman trilogy. Coming in at number 6 is Magneto from the Fox X-Men universe, and the older version of him was played by Ian McKellen, while the younger version was played by Michael Fassbender. And this is just a super compelling villain because of his backstory, where he is this mutant that just had a very hard life. And in the original X-Men trilogy, while it doesn't dive into the specifics, you can definitely see that this man has been through a lot to be the way he is. And then once you get to X-Men First Class, it really explores his origins. And despite all the evil actions he takes, the film definitely shows him in a way that you can still understand his motivations and why he does what he does. And both actors do a really good job of being intimidating in the role. And just on top of that, he has some really cool superpowers where he can manipulate metal. And so that just makes for a lot of great action scenes. Coming in at number 5 is General Zod from the DC Extended Universe, played by Michael Shannon. And this is another complex character where he is doing a lot of bad stuff, but from his point of view, he is doing the right thing and he's the hero of his own story because he does care about Krypton and its legacy. And just Michael Shannon's performance was just absolutely phenomenal. He was just given some really good lines, a really good emotional scene. We even got to see an alternate version of him appear in The Flash, which it didn't do anything crazy with that on a character development level, but I did think it was pretty nice getting to see more of him. I enjoyed that. Coming in at number 4 is Thanos from the MCU, and out of all the villains in any comic book movie, this is probably the one that has accomplished the most, had the most power at any point, because this man was determined to wipe out half the universe. And once again here, we have another compelling villain who has kind of a sad backstory, but he's just so determined to wipe out half the universe, he doesn't stop at anything to accomplish that. And one of the things I think the Infinity Saga did so well was the fact that we kind of had these little glimpses of him before Infinity War. And we've seen a lot of other very powerful villains like Loki. But then once you get to Infinity War, it definitely confirms that Thanos is way more powerful than those types of villains. And so that just makes him so much more intimidating. And upon that, the motion capture here was actually really good. And while he's definitely not a good guy, I definitely will hand it to him, considering that he had the Infinity Gauntlet, where anything he wished could become reality, and all he wished for was for half the population to die. And as soon as he did that, he destroyed the stones so he wasn't tempted to use them again. So even though he was pretty evil, at least he was consistent with what he was saying. And then of course in Avengers Endgame, you get kind of the alternate version of him that comes from 2014 to the modern day to see that humanity didn't thrive after all, and so he decides he wants to reset the universe. So overall, when it comes to Thanos, he's the villain that just really raises the stakes. Coming in at number 3 is Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin, and of course he played the character in Spider-Man 2002 as well as No Way Home. Willem Dafoe is just a great actor. I think he just did such a good job playing a psychopath. This is probably the peak example of a villain with a split personality, and I really don't have much to say. This is pretty much a great version of the character that definitely puts Spider-Man through some trauma. Coming in at number 2 is Loki from the MCU. And this is probably the MCU villain that we got to spend the most time with. He definitely has a really great character arc, where in the early movies it focuses on his jealousy kind of Thor and him just wanting to rule people. And once you get to Thor Ragnarok, while he's still a pretty tricky guy, his relationship with Thor definitely gets much better. And his death in Infinity War is definitely a pretty powerful scene. But of course you get the other variant of Loki, and it explores him with his new TVA friends. By the end of that show, it's like the greatest Marvel scene ever, where he finally gets the throne, but he realizes his purpose is to have the burden of holding the multiverse together. It's just such a powerful scene. But coming in at number 1 is the Joker from The Dark Knight, played by Heath Ledger. This might be the straight up best performance I've seen in anything in the history of cinema. This version of the character kind of takes inspiration from multiple different time periods of comics when it comes to the Joker, and I think this is easily the best live action version of the Joker, where his backstory is just completely left a mystery. I think the laugh here is amazing. The costume design is also very good, and of course this version of the character even kind of has his own twisted sense of humor. And of course you just have the Joker being a psychopath like the comics. He describes himself in this movie as an agent of chaos, and that's pretty much what he does. He wants to test Batman and that kind of stuff, and it was just such a great performance from Heath Ledger, who unfortunately passed away. But overall, those were my picks for the top 10 best live action comic book superhero movie villains. Again, share who you would put in the comment section down below. It definitely was a tough list because there are a lot of great villains to choose from, so it was definitely pretty hard narrowing it down. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.